Chapter 53. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Speak, Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Nan. Junior Nan? Xia Junping called out in a probing manner, but he still didn't receive any response. Luo Nan stood in place in a daze. He finally moved after a dozen seconds. He looked around at the furnishings within the narrow space once more. It was just that the coordination between his head and body seemed to have been completely lost. He was as stiff as a rusty machine. It was as if he could exhaust his last bit of battery at any moment and die here eternally. But in the end, Luo Nan was still able to control his body. He held onto the inner wall of the tree hole and slowly walked down the stairs. His mind was in a trance as if he was sleepwalking. Xia Junping wanted to follow, but he stopped after some thought. He continued to operate his wristband and rummaged through the Order Club's database. Sure enough, there was something new. Bo Qingwen, a doctoral student of the 72nd Institute of Architecture and Design, a senior member of the Order Club. The electronic photo from the early days was of a delicate and pretty woman. It was very fitting with the layout of the treehouse. Perhaps it was because of the first impression, but Xia Junping felt that this woman's facial features were quite similar to Luo Nan's. He already had a 70 to 80% certainty in his heart. Right when he was pondering whether or not he should confirm it a step further, his wristband displayed a call. Xia Junping grinded his teeth when he saw the number. He opened his mouth and was about to start cursing when he thought of Luo Nan downstairs. He forcefully swallowed the curses back into his stomach. He carefully walked to the window and growled, "Husan, you motherfucker want to kill me? You're still talking? What kind of bullshit is that protective system? A new investor. Are you sure? Here to take a look? At this time?" Xia Junping was a bit surprised, but he was able to control his emotions. He pondered for a moment and gave some instructions to the other side. In the end, he gave a solemn warning, "Remember, if something happens again, I'll smash your door." Xia Junping walked down softly and quietly after concluding this matter. He stuck his head out from the stairwell to look down. He didn't dare to turn on the lights. The tree hole was dusky. He only borrowed a bit of daylight to barely see Luo Nan standing in the center of the resting room. He could touch the four walls with a slight stretch of his hand. But for some reason he maintained a rigid posture of touching but not touching. It was as if he wanted to embrace an incorporeal shadow in the darkness. In the end, Luo Nan's figure slowly fell down, gradually submerging into the darkness. Only his faintly trembling back could be seen, like the bottom of a flipped boat that could sink at any moment. Xia Junping didn't want to continue watching, so he quietly walked back and waited in front of the window. As time passed, the sky grew darker and darker. He couldn't help but scratch his head as he considered the information provided by Husan. The sound of footsteps rang out while she was in a dilemma. Luo Nan appeared at the top of the stairs. His face couldn't be seen clearly due to the dim lighting. Xia Junping was delighted. He was just about to open his mouth when he discovered that Luo Nan wasn't paying any attention to him at all. Luo Nan was still like a wandering spirit. He walked all the way to the open table and hesitated for a moment. In the end, he extended his arm over and picked up the base of the round plate on the table. He entered into a daze again. Fine. Let's wait a little longer. Even Xia Junping's breathing slowed down. He just hoped that Luo Nan would return to normal soon. "Senior, I'll have to trouble you with something." The sudden voice startled Xia Junping. Truthfully speaking, he really wasn't used to Luo Nan's gentle tone. Moreover, Luo Nan's voice was a bit hoarse and nasal. Could it be that he was crying? There was a subtle mismatch between the Luo Nan before his eyes and the Luo Nan in his memories. Xia Junping was a bit stupefied, but Luo Nan taking the initiative to communicate with him was a good thing. He went, twice and hurriedly responded, "Go ahead. Go ahead. Love, go little say, Netku, I've already submitted an application to the Order Club. I'll have to trouble Senior to approve it." Okay. No problem. This was the reason why Xia Junping dragged Luo Nan over. Naturally, he had prepared this long ago. "Right now, Junior, you're a new member of the Order Club. Including you, the club currently has a total of 13 members. Of course, you don't need to worry about the others. They'll be expelled from school at the very least. It's just a few procedural requirements for the club's operations. You'll need to put in a bit of effort for the next 2 days. And then I'll accompany you for a lap." Xia Junping's head was lowered as he spoke, but he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He raised his head and saw Luo Nan turn to face him, bowing over 90 degrees. Xia Junping was so shocked that he nearly fell out of the viewing window. He hurriedly helped Luo Nan up. "Oh my! Junior Nan, what are you doing?" Luonan looked straight at Xie Juanping's face and spoke softly. Today, Senior took the initiative to introduce me to the club. Only then did I have the chance to know that my mother still had this work gear when she was alive. I was even able to see her former residence. Xie Juanping was a bit embarrassed. This is a coincidence? It's not like this. My mother had already passed away when I was born. Before I could remember anything, my grandfather had gone mad and my father had left. My other family members didn't know much about my mother. Therefore, 16 years of time couldn't compare to today's understanding of my birth mother. No matter what Senior did in the past, I, Luonan, will never forget this favor. Luonan spoke in a genteel manner, but each word was solemn. Each word was true. Xie Juanping really couldn't stand this proper and serious attitude. Plus, he felt that Luonan's current mental state was a bit abnormal. He pondered for a long time before finally asking cautiously, "It really is Auntie?" Luonan nodded slightly. He didn't know what method he used, but he charged the projector photo frame with electricity. Right now it could be turned on normally, displaying a picture of a woman in her daily life. It seemed that she was right under this withered tree. Back then, the water level of the wetlands had yet to submerge the sandbar. She was dressed in simple and casual attire. She leaned lightly against the withered tree, pointed at the camera, and had a bright and radiant smile. She was a bit more lively and vivid than in the file photo, and she possessed a unique sense of self-confidence and sharpness. Xie Juanping didn't feel good in his heart when he thought about how such a talented and beautiful woman had died young. He didn't know what to say for a time. He could only console her dryly. "Auntie passed away early. She didn't leave many things behind. Junior, you were able to find this inheritance. This is a great thing. You should be happy." It was only at this time that Xie Juanping suddenly remembered. The Luonan before his eyes was only a 16-year-old youth. After stripping away his usual cold and hard outer shell, what was revealed was only a heart riddled with scars because of the death of his father and mother and the shattering of his family. Alright, this was too sour. But Xie Juanping really found it hard to get used to this, especially when he saw Luonan's situation. He hated that he couldn't stay here tonight. This wouldn't do. Xie Juanping gritted his teeth and tried to communicate with Luonan. "Junior Nan, there's a problem right now. In the past, gear was mainly occupied by the Construction Society and the Mystic Arts Research Society. But now a new financial backer has suddenly appeared. He's determined to get gear. Today he's coming over to investigate the scene. I've joined the society. Can they kick me out?" They won't go that far. Then it's fine." It was very clear that the current Luonan's entire mind was immersed in the emotions of remembering his mother. He didn't care about any other news, including the Mystic Arts Research Society. Xie Juanping suddenly felt very tired. "Weren't you the one who came up with the ideas before?" Inexplicably, it was now his turn to rack his brains with all his might. He checked and filled in the gaps, including reminding Luonan to pay attention. "The problem is that there's only one way to get out of here. We can't let those people block us here." Chapter 54. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Xuanhuan provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luonan was stupefied when he heard this. He finally understood the most crucial problem. He looked around the treehouse and was silent for a few seconds before he finally made a decision. "Let's go back first." Looking at the projection album in his hand, he hesitated for a long time before putting it back in place to avoid destroying the original layout of the treehouse. He then closed the bionic bark on the viewing window to make sure that no one would discover it. Luonan's gaze turned to Xie Juanping after he finished doing all this. Xie Juanping immediately raised his hand and swore, "I will absolutely not mention the treehouse to outsiders. This matter will rot in my stomach." Luonan didn't say a word. He just bowed once more. Ever since Luonan had solemnly expressed his thanks last time, Luonan had displayed an even more respectful attitude towards Xie Juanping. Frankly speaking, this made Xie Juanping quite happy in his heart. Luonan was the first to walk down with Xie Juanping following behind. Perhaps it was because he was in a refreshed mood, but an inexplicable idea popped up in Xie Juanping's mind. He borrowed his courage to poke Luonan's shoulder. "Brother Nan, if you don't mind, can I leave a camera?" "Huh?" Luonan suddenly turned around and stared at his face. A person's mentality was strange. In the past, Xie Juanping would definitely be nervous at times like this, and he might not even be able to speak a complete sentence. But after feeling Luonan's respect, his courage rose correspondingly. His train of thought became clearer under Luonan's gaze. "I mean, Brother Nan, don't you think this house is a bit too clean? There were many mosquitoes in the wetland and it was very humid. If it was not cleaned up for a few days, it would be impossible to see. But look at this place. It's clean and refreshing. Of course it's beautiful, but I'm afraid. Luonan's eyes didn't blink at all. He spoke with a hoarse voice, expressing Xie Juanping's unspoken meaning. Someone has already discovered this place and they've been living here for a long time? I'm just saying. Love go, small, say, netko after all, there's an 80% chance that Gear's AI cleaning system won't be able to reach here. Luonan didn't speak again, but his gaze drifted a bit. It was unknown what he was thinking. After a few seconds he turned around and slowly walked down. His fingers were stuck to the inner wall of the tree hole until he reached the beginning of the stone steps. It's here. There used to be a door here, but now it's been filled with bionic materials and sealed. Xie Junping shone the light on the surface and observed it for a while before agreeing, maybe this is a normal door left behind when the sand continent was still around. Then the water level rose and it was destroyed. The water level is rising. Luonan's voice grew hoarser and hoarser. It was as if a blade was stuck in his throat. It became more and more difficult for him to speak. When did the water level rise? Xie Junping went online to search for information. Around 1987. At that time, the underground rock strata had ruptured, and an underground river had changed its course, causing the average water level of the wetland to rise by nearly half a meter. The lake area where the withered tree sandbar was located had risen by a full 7 meters. 87 years. It seemed that senior sister Bo Qingwen had died due to a difficult childbirth, which happened 80 years ago. In any case, it was impossible for her to remodel the tree hole 7 years later. Once his thoughts were sorted out, Xie Junping hissed. There really is someone. Yes, there really is someone. Who is it? Luonan responded with a hoarse voice. He slowly bent down and touched the narrow secret passage that was clearly excavated later. Xie Junping came to a realization. There was also this passageway. There was a 99% chance that it was excavated at the same time as the sealing of the door. It was also done to avoid the rising water level and make it easier to enter and exit. This explained the difference from Bo Qingwen's original design. Xie Junping saw Luonan bend over, seeming to be pondering over the structure of the secret passage. He shone a light beam to make it easier for Luonan to investigate. But when the light beam shone over, Luonan realized something was wrong. Right now, Luonan was indeed pondering, but his fingers were unconsciously digging at the junction between the tree hole and the secret passage. This monotonous movement was not so much a result of inertia, but rather a representation of extreme emotions. Before, Luonan was heavy and sad, but he was relatively calm. His occasional ups and downs were like the night tide of the seaside. It was the rhythm of normal emotions. But right now he was suppressed and irritable. He was like a wounded beast that saw the enemy that injured him intrude into his territory. He was filled with irritation and even savage emotions. Xie Junping was really worried that Luonan would dig out his fingernails. He gingerly shook the light beam. The change in light startled Luonan and he suddenly turned his head. Xie Junping shockingly saw that Luonan's eyes were blood red right now. The blood red wasn't from soaking in tears, but from the accumulation of berserk emotions. It was as if he wanted to devour someone. Xie Junping felt his calf cramp when he saw this. He unconsciously took a step back. However, Luonan's emotions seemed to have calmed down a bit under the illumination of the light. He stopped his monotonous hair-raising movements and spoke in a low voice. "Senior, where were we just now?" There's someone living in the tree hole." They sealed the front door and even dug out a secret passage that leads to the laboratory. Luonan shook his head. The underwater corridor is a dead end. It's normally completely unobstructed. It's too conspicuous for outsiders to come in. Therefore it can't be anyone else. It can only be an internal member of the society or the laboratory. Xie Junping thought about it and agreed. This made more sense. But when he thought deeper, there was such a person in the Order Club. He normally lived and socialized within the club. But when no one was paying attention, he would quietly pass through the underwater corridor and enter the tree hole. He would engage in some shady business. The most important thing was that this span of time could have lasted for 7 to 8 years. 10 years. All the way until now. Just thinking about it made Luonan's heart go cold. Xie Junping suddenly had a thought. Motherfucker. It can't be that someone suddenly came in from the other side while they were drilling the secret passage. Or maybe they could swim and come in from the viewing hole? The thought was born. He looked at the pitch-black entrance of the secret passage and the spiraling staircase behind him. His entire body felt unwell. Luonan didn't seem to think too much. He slowly stood up and bowed towards Xie Junping. I'll have to trouble Senior with the matter of the camera installation? If there's still someone, I want to see just who in the world it is. Xie Junping was actually a bit flustered in his heart. But having Luo Nan by his side was more or less comforting. He took a deep breath. Okay. I'll install it right now. You have ready-made tools? I brought a bit. Xie Junping was a bit embarrassed, but he still took out 2 miniature cameras the size of rice grains from his wristband. This group of second-generation rich kids would sometimes play with absurd tricks. They relied on these. This sort of portable miniature machine couldn't be any simpler to install. They just needed to find a position with a relatively wide field of view, press it and it would stick. It wouldn't fall off easily. Xie Junping used both cameras. This little toy can achieve real-time video transmission. A single camera can work for over 3 months. Actually, looking at the degree of cleanliness, if we're lucky we should be able to get results in a day or 2. While Xie Junping was working, Luo Nan walked up and down the entire tree-hole space. But he didn't discover any more clues. His mood was clearly even more depressed right now. He didn't say a word as he made his way through the secret passage and entered the underwater corridor. Xie Junping followed cautiously. He kept the surveillance screen open at all times for fear that a murderer who had been hiding for many years would suddenly jump out from behind him. Chapter 55. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Xuanhuan provides you with wonderful novels to read. Jumping down from the secret passage, Xie Junping looked up. The camouflage film blocked his line of sight perfectly, making him look like a piece of alloy steel. Who would have thought that there was a short and narrow secret passage that led to this strange tree-hole space? Luo Nan didn't say a word. He silently made his way back. Xie Junping glanced at the surveillance screen once more. He hurried 2 steps to walk shoulder to shoulder with Luo Nan. But soon he regretted his decision. At this time, all the system modules in the laboratory had returned to normal. When they returned, it was no longer dark. Inside the glass wall, under the special black light, the dark purple light made this area of water look dreamy and illusory. But to Xie Junping, this long and tedious road was simply torture. The mental state of Luo Nan next to her was abnormal. Along the way, Luo Nan continued the oppressive and impatient state he had in the tree hole. He was constantly spinning in circles in his own thoughts. Sometimes, he would stop abruptly and turn his head to look at the long corridor behind him, as well as the increasingly gloomy waters beside him. He would be in a daze for a long time. Every time this happened, the blood-red color in his eyes would be bright and glistening, making it hard for others to look at him directly. There were even several times when Xie Junping could hear the sound of his teeth clenching. After walking and stopping for a few minutes, Xie Junping became even more certain. Luo Nan was about to go crazy. He didn't doubt in the slightest that if someone dared to say, "I'm the person who lives in the tree hole right now," Luo Nan would immediately pounce over and tear that person's throat to shreds. Then he would roar and interrogate, "What the hell are you doing over there?" What was he thinking? If this continued, Xie Junping felt that he would go crazy. Something had to be done. Xie Junping racked his brains to recall some of the communication classes he had attended. He tried to think of a way to express himself. After hesitating for a while, he finally said, "Junior brother, do you know very little about Auntie?" Luo Nan was clearly stupefied. His circle of self had been broken, and this power came from the nostalgia he had for his mother. This wondrous emotion was like a surging river that washed over his heart. It was slightly painful, but it wasn't bad. A long time passed before Luo Nan nodded. "Yes, very few. There's a way." Xie Junping was overjoyed and continued, "Auntie doesn't have any relatives?" Luo Nan continued to respond, "My mother was a war orphan. She grew up in an orphanage." Xie Junping almost choked, but after calculating the time, Bo Qingwen was indeed born before the Third World War. There were many such situations in that generation. No matter what, the conversation had finally begun. "Is it in the local area? If you want to gather more information, Junior, I have some power in Xia City." Xie Junping took charge again and the results were actually pretty good. Luo Nan bowed towards him. "Thank you, Senior." Here it comes again. She felt that Luo Nan was like a person from the previous century. Or perhaps he acted completely according to the patterns of the books. Yep. Perhaps this was the case. It was just that his cold face matched well with his actions, giving people the illusion that he was relatively mature. Thinking of this, Xie Junping was even more confident about this exchange. He waved his hand and said, "Actually, I really admire Auntie. To be able to single-handedly design gear, and even after more than 20 years, People are still fighting over it. I even thought it was the masterpiece of some great master. This is also the first time I've heard of it. Then Brother Nan, what did you know before? Didn't your family mention anything about Auntie? The sudden silence nearly made Xie Junping think that he had outsmarted himself. But in the end Luo Nan still opened his mouth. Mom passed away before I was born? You said it before. Hold on. Why did these words sound a bit strange? Before Xie Junping could think it through, he heard Luo Nan speak. Mom and him met at Acumen College. They went together to the wilderness and met up with my grandfather. At the time, my aunt had a terrible relationship with them. She knew very little. Luo Nan's words were a bit incoherent, and there were some subtle references. Xie Junping was able to understand after combining the information he had gathered before. Luo Nan's parents probably met and fell in love while studying at Acumen College. They went together to the wilderness to assist Luo Nan's grandfather in his research. And at the time, Luo Nan's current guardian, his aunt, didn't have a good relationship with his family. She didn't know much about the relevant circumstances. It was naturally hard for Luo Nan to obtain relevant information about his mother when his grandfather was insane and his father was missing. Luo Nan subconsciously reached out his hand as he spoke. His fingertips made contact with the glass wall, emitting a muffled sound of friction. I only knew one thing about my mother since I was young. She passed away before I was born. It was these words again, and a strange feeling emerged once more. Xie Junping pondered back and forth twice before he finally realized what the problem was. How could she have given birth to a child when she was already dead? He had heard that in the past, when medical conditions were relatively backward, there were cases of misfortune and dystocia. The mother had already passed away but the child was still preserved. Luo Nan was probably like this? Xie Junping believed that he had understood the crux of the matter. He was just about to continue the topic when he saw Luo Nan pull out a highlighter pen from his black notebook. He drew an oval-shaped cabinet on the glass wall. A slender silhouette of a person sat next to it. The lines of the drawing were simple to the extreme, but the content expressed was extremely straightforward and clear. This is my mother. Luo Nan's voice was strangely gentle. I've never seen her with my own eyes, but I've heard people say that this is how she gave birth to me. Xie Junping was a bit confused. It said that it was June 80. I was 7 months old. I was in my mother's stomach. The base was in chaos and my mother was heavily injured. She sealed off the laboratory and used the only health pod inside to save me. Look, I'm here. Luo Nan drew a small circle on the oval, which was the center of the health pod. Xie Junping opened his mouth but no sound came out. Actually, he originally wanted to ask how a fetus was placed in the health pod inside the stomach. But when the words reached the tip of his tongue, he suddenly understood the tragic process. He was stupefied in place all of a sudden. Luo Nan lightly pressed the edge of the silhouette. His tone was still so gentle that it was frightening. I can't see her, but she's always been here. This is my mother. Xie Junping looked stupidly at the fluorescent lines. He didn't know how to respond for a time. Luo Nan walked forward and changed to a different area. He drew a few more lines, borrowing the illumination of the black light to form an oppressive shadow. At the front of the shadow was a prison-like structure. A person sat upright inside and next to him was a small figure. 3 years later my grandfather was sued, imprisoned and went crazy. The laboratory was gone, the experimental materials were gone, and the research results were gone. At this time a certain someone was gone as well. Luo Nan gave Xie Junping a strange smile. He should be here but he's not. This is my father. They just happened to walk to the starting point of the underwater corridor at this time. Luo Nan put away the fluorescent pen and bowed towards Xie Junping once more. I just said some senseless words. I've troubled you, senior. Clearly Luo Nan understood Xie Junping's thoughts. Conversely, Xie Junping was finally able to peek into a corner of Luo Nan's tortuous and gloomy inner world. Moreover, Luo Nan's emotions were clearly much calmer. This could be considered a contribution. Xie Junping let out a secret breath. Right when he was about to respond, the voices of people came from not too far away. 7 or 8 people crowded into the surrounding resting area of the underwater corridor. Some people even greeted Xie Junping. Brother Ping, we're here. Chapter 56. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go? Speak. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Xie Junping frowned as he looked over. Hu Huaying of the student council was among the people who came. He was also Hu San'er. He could be considered Xie Junping's best friend and ally. He was the one who greeted Xie Junping. In addition, there were 2 unfamiliar faces. The other 4 people were the upper echelons of the construction society. Even the society's president, Lang Ding, had come. Xia Junping suddenly had an ominous premonition when he saw this situation. Xia Junping grumbled in his heart, but he still put on a smiling face and went forward to greet them. This kind of social work was his forte. Moreover, he didn't need to face Luonan for the time being. He immediately felt the world open up to him. He could do as he pleased, returning from the hellish difficulty to the novice setting. Even though there were 7 people in front of him, he was still able to greet them with familiarity without the slightest bit of confusion. He also inquired clearly about the identities of the 2 unfamiliar people. One was a lawyer with the surname Zhu. He was the financial backer's representative. His attitude was calm and indifferent. He had the aloof demeanor of a society elite. The other was a bodyguard. He had a dark skin and a swift and fierce body. He had a rather cool professional appearance. He ignored everyone. Both of them were people who had been working hard in society, and their ages were much older than the students present. It was reasonable to say that the school's society work office should send out a corresponding person to receive them in this kind of situation. Or perhaps a teacher consultant of the relevant society should come forward. But Xia Junping didn't see any of these. Xia Junping felt that something was wrong more and more. Soon, his premonition became reality. While he was exchanging pleasantries with lawyer Zhu, he directly said, "The Rainbow Fund is quite satisfied with the Construction Society's development plan and personnel composition. They are willing to carry out a more practical cooperation. Injecting capital to purchase a landmark building on the North Bank is also a pretty good investment. I hope to obtain the cooperation of the school and the student council in the relevant procedures and arrangements." Xia Junping laughed it off, but he had cursed Husaner 1,000 times in his heart. You can't even explain this kind of thing clearly. It's true that the new financial backer has arrived, but he's not directly entering the scene and starting from scratch. He's here to assist the construction society. Damn. I originally thought that the Twin Dragon Society was going to become the Three Kingdom kill. But looking at the situation, it was clearly one-sided. He grinned. When he shook hands with Lang Ding, he said, "I won't mention anything else, but I have to say that I'm impressed by the construction society's ability to attract sponsors." As the chairman of a large society, Lang Ding was not a particularly domineering person. At this moment he only smiled. It's fine. Bringing in a new investor will make the society's capital structure more reasonable, and it will be easier to manage. Good luck. Xia Junping laughed and laughed, but in his heart he screamed, "Trouble?" He turned his head to glance at Luonan. This master still had a downcast appearance. He didn't care about the group of uninvited guests at all. Indeed, according to Luonan's logic, as long as he was in the Order Club, within the building that his mother had designed, it didn't matter who took control of this place in the end. My lord, how could it be that easy? Xia Junping cursed inwardly, feeling a headache coming on. Whether it was the Construction Society or the Mystic Arts Research Society, none of these large-scale societies were easy to deal with. If you didn't do your job well beforehand, a small club member would have plenty of ways to make you lose your job. The reason why Xia Junping dared to guarantee Luonan before was because he had already given the Mystic Arts Research Society a heads up. The road ahead and the road behind were completely paved. As for the Construction Society, it really wasn't easy to handle. Lang Ding was easy to talk to, but the structure of this society was quite complicated. There were many thorns in the executive committee. Let's not talk about other things. That damn dog Li Shueqing was the vice president of the Construction Society. He possessed a lot of influence within the society. If Luonan really entered the Construction Society and bumped into Li Shueqing, wouldn't a mysterious campus death case occur? He had to think of a plan when he got back. Xia Junping didn't have the mood to stay any longer when his thoughts reached this point. He spoke a few more words of nonsense and pulled Luonan to leave. But who knew that lawyer Zhu of the Rainbow Fund would call him to a stop after just a few steps? Head Xia, there's something I need to consult you about. Xia Junping was the head of the Society Activities Department of the Student Council, but there were very few people who directly addressed him by his title on campus. He was stunned for a moment before turning his head and putting on a smiling face. Lawyer Zhu, please don't hesitate to ask. Lawyer Zhu nodded slightly. It's related to the assets of the society. From the looks of things, the Order Club has already entered a state of idleness. And it will take at least 3 months to half a year to complete the procedures. This is quite unfavorable for preserving the value of the existing assets. Therefore, we suggest that we contact the competing society and hold a coordination meeting. We will officially count and seal all of the assets of the Order Club to reduce depreciation losses and avoid additional consumption. We hope that the Student Council will be able to coordinate and organize in the middle to complete the relevant procedures as soon as possible. Xie Juanping's brows furrowed. If you seal off the society, where will the master next to me go? Lawyer Zhu spoke without waiting for a response. In addition, we also hope that the school can conduct a strict examination of the procedures. We just paid attention to the Order Club's society website and discovered that a new member has actually entered the society. Can the society still recruit members during this period of lockdown? We need an explanation for the reason for joining the society during the auction of the society assets. *CK. This guy was specifically looking for trouble. Xie Juanping's face darkened in an instant. At the same time, he found it very strange. He didn't remember offending the Rainbow Fund or this litigator surnamed Zhu. Logically speaking, the Rainbow Fund was a very famous investment fund in Xia City. There was no need to be so stingy, right? He shot a glance at Luo Nan. Luo Nan had clearly heard Lawyer Zhu's words. He had already raised his head, but his gaze wasn't directed at the spokesperson. Instead, it fell onto the body of the dark-skinned bodyguard by Lawyer Zhu's side. Something was wrong. Although Xie Juanping didn't understand what was going on, he definitely wouldn't budge an inch on this matter. He replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Lawyer Zhu might not know, but according to the school's procedures, the Order Club hasn't been dissolved yet. It's only managed by the school's student council. Its main function is still to maintain the club's normal operations. Recruiting members is also within reason. Lawyer Zhu smiled. All of the original members of the society have entered the detention process. It's hard to believe that the society can still operate normally. Otherwise, the school wouldn't have launched an asset auction. Based on the escrow agreement, our understanding is that the so-called escrow should be in a situation where the society has substantially disappeared, so as to fully realize the preservation of assets. If Minister Xie thinks that our understanding is wrong, we can also convene a coordination meeting to consult the opinions of other bidders, and we can choose the greatest common divisor. Xie Juanping was slightly stunned. He really didn't have the guts to hold that coordination meeting. Lawyer Zhu's gaze shifted to fall on Luo Nan's face. But then he quickly exchanged glances with the dark-skinned bodyguard by his side. The latter nodded slightly before speaking. So this is the student Luo Nan who just joined the club? I just saw the announcement of your joining the club on the website. I'll take the liberty to ask. What's your reason for joining the club? Did you go through the relevant investigations? Did you have an understanding of the Order Club's circumstances before joining the club? Luo Nan held his notebook in his arms when faced with this interrogation. He was cold and quiet, not uttering a single word. But Xie Juanping couldn't bear to watch. He shouted, "Hey hey hey. That's 3 sentences already. If you want a reason, ask me. Who knows better than me?" Chapter 57. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go? Speak, net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Xie Juanping shifted the focus of the conflict back to himself, but in his opinion, perhaps he had saved Lawyer Zhu's life. When he thought of this, he felt a sense of superiority from a higher position. Lawyer Zhu, if you say that the Order Club continues to operate and recruit new members is a loss of resources, then I won't admit it. Do we students eat pig's feed? Husan, the Order Club's qualifications to recruit new members have just been restored in the new semester, right? Hu Huaying was a bit dizzy from the sudden intensification of the conflict. Xie Juanping had already dragged him into the water, and their many years of alliance hadn't been in vain. He immediately nodded. It was restored on September 1st. Xie Juanping was fully aware that this was a sign of a lag in the execution process, but he treated it as evidence and threw it at Lawyer Zhu's face. Perhaps Lawyer Zhu doesn't understand the internal situation of the school, so I might as well inform you. In the past few years, the Order Club has been courting disaster. Aside from last year's financial problems, there was also an experimental accident in 1993, and their membership qualifications were revoked. But this qualification was officially restored on September 1st this year. What does this mean? It means that the school still hopes to give the Order Club a chance, to let this old club that has existed since the school's founding preserve a bit of its mark. Even if it can't escape the fate of merging in the end, it won't completely disappear. At least there's still a legacy. Xie Juanping originally didn't believe these absurd words, but the more he spoke, the more excited he became. He was even a bit moved. Because at this moment he suddenly thought of Bo Qingwen. He thought of this talented female senior who single-handedly designed gear. After leaving behind her iconic work, she left for the distant wilderness, and then perished in such a tragic and stirring manner. A club that once possessed such an outstanding person had to leave something behind, to let people remember something. He was doing exactly this. And so, Xie Juanping's voice grew louder and louder. A newcomer makes an application and the club approves it. Isn't that normal? I see that this student's application is sincere, and his reason is sufficient. He himself is also very outstanding. What's wrong with allowing him to join the club during the escrow period? Lawyer Zhu had seen this type of expression where emotions were greater than reason many times. Young people always like to be like this. He smiled and shook his head. Reason sufficient? Can you tell me the specifics? If it was before, Xie Junping might have encountered awkwardness, but today was different. He laughed heartily. Of course it's sufficient, it's sufficient. He directly pulled out the blueprint from the society's database and showed it to everyone through the projection equipment nearby. Gear, which is also the building we are in, was designed by our school's Architectural Design Institute 72 PhD student, Ms. Bo Qingwen. The final construction was completed. This is the relevant electronic file, including Ms. Bo's personal signature. There shouldn't be any problems, right? Lawyer Zhu? Lawyer Zhu felt that something was amiss. He withdrew his smile and frowned. Xie Juanping's heart skipped a beat when the black-faced bodyguard beside him glared at him coldly. This guy didn't look like a bodyguard but more like an armed gangster. However, under the push of unprecedented emotions, Xie Junping quickly roused his spirit and boldly said, "Just by relying on this one work gear, Ms. Bo Qingwen is the pride of our school. Unfortunately, Lady Bu passed away 6 years after completing this work. Unfortunately, the heavens were jealous of her talent. After that, Gear's personnel changed and no one remembered that stunning senior sister from back then. Until today." Xie Junping walked with large strides to Luonan's side. He draped his arm over Luonan's shoulder. Until today, Lady Bu's only son, student Luonan, has followed in his mother's footsteps and entered Acumen College to study. After a month of searching, he found his mother's work from back then. But he witnessed the decline of the Order Club and the lack of maintenance on gear. He was heartbroken and took the initiative to join the society, to contribute all of his strength, to let this legendary building radiate its splendor once more. Is this reason enough? Luonan shot a glance at the palm on his shoulder, but he didn't say anything in the end. The most difficult person to please didn't have any objections. Xie Juanping's imposing manner rose with the tide. Junior Lang, Lawyer Zhu. Even though we know that the Order Club is likely to become history, Lady Bu's contributions to the school and student Luonan's contributions to his mother's honor should receive the school's support and encouragement. Even though this is my personal opinion, I'll say it here. If you have any objections, you can doubt it. Suing is no problem. Suing the student council, the alumni association, the parent conference, the president's office, and the board of directors is no exception. What's fake can't be real. What's real can't be fake. I really want to see who was able to sever the flesh and blood of Lady Bu and Junior Luonan? Who was able to destroy the mother-son affection between them? Who was able to trample the cultural inheritance of our school into the ground and ruin it? Xie Juanping's imposing manner right now was truly earth-shattering. He glared and pointed at the irrelevant people. Junior Lang? Lang Ding smiled bitterly and waved his hand. He didn't want to clash with Xie Junping. Xie Junping looked at the most talkative person. Lawyer Zhu? Lawyer Zhu's face turned a bit green. He didn't respond immediately. It seemed that he was preparing his words. How could Xie Junping give him the chance? Right now his heart was carefree, indescribable with words. In the end he just laughed out loud, put his arm around Luonan's shoulder and swaggered off. This was an unprecedented victory. Xie Juanping's eyes were practically brimming with hot tears before he had even walked a few steps. This was the first time he didn't look at the teleprompter. He didn't use his built-in earphones to give a passionate speech, okay? The effects were simply explosive. It was a pity. It was a pity that he wasn't able to record it. He wouldn't be able to recollect it in the future. Hold on. Perhaps there was a way. Xie Junping turned his head and asked, Junior Nan. My image this time. Give me a drawing. Sorry? Only now did Xie Junping discover that he had forgotten himself in his excitement just now. He was still holding Luonan's arm and hadn't let go yet. Xie Junping immediately shrunk his neck and hastily pulled his hand back when this old man's cold gaze swept over him. Who knew that Luonan would give him a thumbs up in the next moment? Senior, you're eloquent. Xie Junping coughed. He wanted to be a bit reserved. I've seen this bunch of litigators many times. It's Auntie and Junior Nan who gave me the confidence. In the end he couldn't help but grin and laugh loudly. He couldn't control his mouth in the end. Speaking of which, Junior Nan, just give me a drawing. It'd be a pity if you didn't keep it as a souvenir. Luo Nan actually didn't refuse. He just said, I'll go buy a flexible screen first. Xia Junping didn't expect Luo Nan to respond. He suddenly received this kind of response. He was stunned for a moment before becoming overjoyed. Actually, a portrait didn't count for much. But this represented that his friendship with Luo Nan had truly entered a new stage. He immediately slapped his chest. I'll buy this. No need. Thanks. Luo Nan laughed, but he quickly restrained himself. He lowered his head and flipped open the notebook. He went to the page of the flexible e-ink screen and looked at the cracked screen. A moment later he opened the metal ring and removed the flexible e-ink screen. He weighed it in his hand and suddenly assumed a posture of wanting to throw it. Xia Junping was shocked to the side. He instinctively went to grab Luo Nan's arm. But who knew that Luo Nan himself would stop before he could exert his strength? He faced Xia Junping with a smile. Destroying hygiene isn't too good, right? Xia Junping fiercely nodded his head no matter what kind of craziness Luo Nan was having. He was fully aware of how Li Xueqing had turned into a dead dog. So he could guess the importance of this flexible e-ink screen to Luo Nan. He couldn't help but worry that Luo Nan would make a choice that he would regret in the future due to his momentary emotions. If Luo Nan could figure it out by himself, then that would be for the best. Luo Nan muttered to himself for a moment. In the end, he placed the flexible e-ink screen back into the notebook and continued to walk forward. It was as if nothing had happened. Chapter 58. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Xuanhuan provides you with wonderful novels to read. Xia Junping's luxury car sped along the high-speed magnetic track. For a rich kid like him, a phantom being sealed was just an opportunity for the other collections in the garage to show themselves. Xia City had already entered the darkness of night outside the car window. It was rush hour, but the city was rarely congested. Over the past few decades, billions of tons of soil, steel, and other special materials had been used to build the magnificent metropolis according to the will of mankind. More than 200 million people were crammed into the limited land. But it could still operate efficiently. Just like transportation. From the ground to the sky, Xia City was divided into 20 layers of transportation. They were divided into hundreds of millions of different types of transportation. Even when the traffic was the most dense, it only took about 20 minutes to cover the 40 kilometers. Xia Junping volunteered to take Luo Nan home, so Luo Nan was happy and relaxed. He seized this time to familiarize himself with the newly purchased flexible e-ink screen, mainly the feel of the screen and the electronic pen. As for the other configurations, they were meaningless. When the external neuron seeped into it and connected to the battery module, the familiar interface that hadn't changed for 5 years appeared in front of him. However, the gear icon that still existed in the laboratory was nowhere to be seen, indicating that the special hardware and software foundation still had a certain impact on the external neuron. Luo Nan's fingers stroked the original gear icon twice, then he opened the drawing software he hadn't used in a long time. At the top of the software interface was still the image of the burning wraith, and it still looked as malevolent and terrifying as before. But after experiencing the concise and abstract lines of the wraith sign, Luo Nan felt that this sketch was truly unbearable to look at. There were many mistakes and awkwardness. Shaking his head, he directly deleted the magical sketch and replaced it with the one that depicted the entrance of the nightclub. Hey, delete this one as well. Change it to something prettier. Xia Junping just so happened to turn his head at this time. He only saw Luo Nan delete a picture, but he was unable to see the content clearly. Love Gong small say Netka. However, he was very clear about what was going to happen next, so he immediately shouted. Luo Nan cast a glance at him and said in a lukewarm tone, "Pay attention to your driving. This is a high-speed magnetic track. How am I supposed to drive it?" Xia Junping put his hand on the steering wheel, but he received a warning from the car's AI, telling him to enter the conversion zone before adjusting the magnetic track to avoid a rear-end collision. Xia Junping had an innocent expression on his face. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to him. He created a blank page on the drawing software and immediately put pen to paper. Xia Junping drew close with a whoosh. He saw Luo Nan use the digital pen to draw out the blurry shadows of the background. It was vaguely the internal layout of gear. Xia Junping was excited when he suddenly became stupefied. Who is he? That dark-skinned bodyguard? Why did you draw him? I've seen it before. Luonan sketched out the outline of the dark-faced bodyguard. He wanted to add a few fine strokes, but he was a bit hesitant. For him, this was a rather rare situation. Xie Junping was still a little unconvinced. Who is he? I saw it on the ship Lanshan yesterday. It's probably Quantum Corporation's? Burner. Xie Junping's chin smashed into his own shoulder. It should be. Back on the warship, it was this dark-faced man who dragged Quantum Corporation's deep blue walker armor. He drove past Luonan's side. The two of them made eye contact, and the dark-faced man even sealed his outer armor with a membrane, as if he was guarding against a thief. The process could not be considered pleasant. Xie Junping was drenched in cold sweat. It seemed that he had clashed with the dark-faced man's gaze when he was passionately giving his speech. If the dark-faced man were to slap him, his recently upgraded mouth would probably shatter into pieces. In comparison, Quantum Corporation's deterrent power wasn't as direct. Luonan just shook his head at Xie Junping's performance. He flipped over the page and put his pen to paper once more. This time it really was Xie Junping's image. Even though it was clearly a gift, Luonan didn't deliberately add more ink. It was the same as before, a few strokes and the image appeared clearly. This person had his arm around Xie Junping's shoulder while waving his arm. He seemed excited, angry, and a bit crazy. But the arm around Xie Junping's neck and the shadow on his flank made this somewhat out-of-control action turn into a somewhat upright and unyielding guardian. Xie Junping was still yelling, "How could I be this crazy?" But after seeing the overall composition, he became happier the more he looked. This continued until he was grinning from ear to ear. He was satisfied to the extreme. In the end, there was only one point of dissatisfaction. That's you on the side, right? Why didn't you draw it? I'm not good at self-portraits. Luonan responded simply and immediately sent this picture over. He didn't care what Xie Junping did with it. And then Luonan selected the two new sketches he had drawn as well as the ones he had accumulated before. He pressed on the screen for a few seconds and the second layer of the drawing software opened up. It was the true appearance. He had tried it yesterday in the confinement room of the warship and failed. Today he switched to a different machine and everything went smoothly. The main body of the second layer was the tetrahedron on the title page of his grandfather's notebook. It was just that it didn't have an inscribed sphere or an outer scribed sphere. Instead, it was divided into 5 roughly equal layers. It rotated within the gray background. Xie Junping's gaze shifted over. He was a bit curious. Maslow? This interface really did look very close to the diagram of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This theory arranged a person's needs from low to high, from basic to complex. It was like a staircase that was arranged into 5 layers. As long as one had a bit of common sense in sociology and psychology, they wouldn't be unfamiliar with this classical theory and related diagram from the last century. Xie Junping pointed and said, "From bottom to top. Physiology, safety, social interaction, respect, and self-realization? It's students, employees, technicians, clergymen, and politicians. So vulgar. I'm saying that these occupations can be arranged in a staircase?" Luonan didn't explain. Right now he had selected a dozen or so sketches, and they all moved into the enclosed space of the tetrahedron. There were at least several hundred similar artworks scattered within. Within the enclosed space, all the sketches were scaled down. They began to flip up and down as new sketches entered. It looked like a marvelous card set that was repeatedly shuffled and rearranged under the drive of the software. Several seconds later, the positions of the several hundred artworks within the card shuffling machine were determined. The vast majority of them were arranged in the bottom 2 layers. Occasionally there was a 3rd layer, but the 4th and 5th layers were all blank. I can play with them like tarot cards? A fortune teller? Which company made this software? Xie Junping was attracted by the marvelous changes in the interface. His mind was filled with questions. At the same time, he opened his eyes wide and strove to find his own image. It's my father's work. Xie Junping immediately became honest. He roughly understood Luonan's temperament now. He knew that Luonan wouldn't be in a good mood as long as it was related to his father. Luonan was much quieter for the rest of the journey. The flying car arrived at Blue Bay Community at approximately 7:15. This was a bit later than the usual time to get home. Luonan bid farewell to Xie Junping and walked into the community. Soon a scratching noise rang above his head. The familiar rhythm indicated that it was ink greeting him. Luonan didn't raise his head as he walked into the apartment building's elevator. He opened his notebook after choosing his floor and stared at the flexible e-ink screen. He stared blankly at the special interface of the second floor. Then he sneered. That coward would forever shrink his head and tail even though he was declaring his existence. The drawing software was like this. The external neuron was like this. The tree-hole space. Was it like this? Luonan didn't know, but the burning pain in his heart could not be clearer. The elevator reached the floor and the metal door opened. Luonan closed his notebook with a bang and walked out with large strides. The home AI sensed his existence and opened the front door after confirming it. Luonan stepped inside, but he was slightly startled. The lights in the living room were on. A middle-aged lady was sitting on the sofa, handling business through her wristband. She raised her head when she heard the door open. She looked straight at him with an expressionless face. Chapter 59. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Xuanhuan provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luonan immediately stood at attention. Aunt? The middle-aged lady on the sofa was Luonan's aunt, Luo Shuqing. She was small and thin, with a plain face and a quiet and serious temperament. Luonan hung his head as usual in front of this elder. Auntie, you came from so far away? There's someone who just won't budge no matter how much I ask. So, I came over to pay my respects. Mrs. Luo Shuqing's poisonous tongue was as sharp as ever. It immediately made Luonan speechless. It was only then that he realized why it was so easy to pass the inspection last night. His aunt had probably already made up her mind to come here for a surprise inspection. Well, that was my aunt's style. Luo Shuqing looked at her watch and stood up. Let's go. Your uncle has already prepared dinner and is waiting for us. She didn't give Luonan any chance to object. Luonan still wanted to struggle a bit. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Since you know it's troublesome, don't go looking for trouble. Luo Shuqing walked to Luonan's side. She was a head shorter than her skinny nephew, but her imposing manner was a head higher. These are extraordinary times. You're extremely daring. You live in a high-rise apartment and aren't afraid of the building collapsing. But your uncle and I are old. We're scared witless. We're counting on you to go back and look after us. Luonan gaped, but he discovered that he didn't have the strength to argue. He really didn't have the strength. He had been working non-stop for 40 hours, and he hadn't closed his eyes once during this time. He faced the burning wraith, the burner, the ability users, and the secrets of the external neuron and gear. Countless information poured in and burst forth, and there was also the intense washing of emotions due to his mother and coward. He had practically overdrafted all of his energy. At this moment, he felt as if he had just returned home after a long and arduous march. Then, in the face of his aunt, who had always treated him as her own daughter, in the face of a rare family member who could completely relax, why should he argue and torment himself? In a moment of stupefaction, Luo Shuqing had already forcefully pulled Luonan's shoulder to face the door. Everyone, time is precious. Let's go. The familiar, unyielding and affectionate action made the corner of Luonan's mouth twitch. He wanted to reveal a smile and announce his failure in front of his aunt. This was his usual routine and it was what made his aunt most proud of him. Love go, small say, net chew, but halfway through he couldn't go any further. Because at this moment, the fatigue, hardship, pressure, and most importantly, the uncontrollable complex emotions that had accumulated over the past 2 days all rushed to his head, roaring as he searched for an opportunity to vent them. It seemed that any slight tug on the facial nerves would cause the fragile dam to collapse, and everything would flow out. There was an instant when Luonan even wanted to drag his aunt back to school. He wanted to point out gear in the tree hole for her to see. He wanted to ask her if she felt the same way he did. However, when he thought about how his aunt knew almost nothing about his mother, this impulse disappeared. Some things were destined to be shouldered by oneself. No one would be able to fully accept and understand your feelings. The fact that he was able to tell Xie Junping so much today was already a sign of him losing control of his emotions. It would be difficult for him to do so again. 100 thoughts crossed Luonan's mind. In the end, Luonan just slightly raised his head to avoid letting his aunt see the sorry appearance of him losing control of his facial expression. But how to resolve this extremely unnatural movement was beyond his ability. Just as he was feeling awkward, his wristband vibrated. Luonan turned around in practically an instant, his back facing his aunt. He took a deep breath before connecting to his wristband. A half-familiar yet half-familiar voice immediately transmitted over, "Hey handsome, wanna meet?" "What's up?" Luonan already saw that it was Zhang Yingying's number. He didn't have the strength to tangle with this overly lively woman with words, but the hoarseness of his voice shocked him the instant he opened his mouth. Afraid that his aunt would hear something strange, Luonan walked a few steps into the house. Zhang Yingying was quite sharp. She could hear that Luonan's state was a bit off. She asked curiously, "Are you sleeping? Where are you?" Luonan adjusted his voice and did his best to use short and clear words. "At home." "Okay, I think so too. But your heart is quite big. You haven't received a notice of the entrance exam all day. You don't even know to call and ask?" How could Luonan say that he had completely forgotten about this matter? "I give it to you. Where did the initiative of the job seeker this morning go?" "I still remember even now. Teacher, I want to be a staff member." The young girl pinched her throat, fabricating words that Luonan had never said before. Luonan actually laughed. Far too many things had happened today. From Luonan's perspective, each matter was heavier than the last. His thoughts had already been forced into a very narrow region. Zhang Yingying's jesting brought it up made his mind much clearer. The Professional Ability User Society? Okay, the Explorer Society was a platform that he had to fight for no matter what. Right now he didn't have the extra strength to go and think about things that had already happened. He didn't have any hope of becoming emotional and fretful. He asked, "It's starting?" "Well, hurry back right now. Your main examiner is about to arrive at the large living area outside of Acumen College, the Limestone Water Village pub. I'll explain the specifics to you when you arrive. I feel that your chance has come." Limestone Water Village pub. Could this call have come 20 minutes earlier? Luonan was speechless for a time, but he didn't say much. After all, this phone call gave him an excellent reason. He hung up and his mood more or less calmed down. He turned around and wanted to speak to his aunt. But he never expected to meet Mrs. Luo Shuqing's curious gaze. "You're going out?" Yes. A date?" "No." Luonan immediately shrunk back. "Then what is it?" Luo Shuqing didn't let him off. It's a gathering." "A gathering? Limestone Water Village pub? I remember that it's near your school. Why don't you just go there?" "Didn't I forget?" Luonan was struggling to deal with this when he suddenly remembered something. It seemed that Shuelei's girlfriend had mentioned this afternoon. He operated his wristband on the spot and sure enough, he received an invitation from the Acumen Mutual Assistance Association in his mailbox. Coincidentally, the Acumen Mutual Assistance Association's gathering location was also the Limestone Water Village pub. Of course, the meeting time had already passed, but it didn't affect him taking the blame. Luonan showed the email to his aunt. "This is the school's Mutual Assistance Association activity. It's a very formal cold dinner party." Mutual Assistance Association. Why are you interested in it? Luo Shuqing understood her child's temperament the best. With his introverted and autistic personality, how could he be interested in this kind of social gathering? Luonan took out a ready-made reason. The school's societies are very exclusive. It would be very troublesome without a senior to lead the way. I still haven't joined a society yet. I'm afraid of getting my points deducted, so... You didn't pass the Mystic Arts Research Society test. Yeah. Did you take the initiative to go to the Mutual Assistance Association? No, they came to find me. Luo Shuqing finally believed him when she saw her nephew's introverted and immature expression. She shook her head. Acumen College is getting worse with each batch. If you knew this earlier, why did you set your mind on getting in? Luonan was silent. Luo Shuqing still wanted to say more, but she suddenly saw Luonan's thin figure standing in the room. Behind him was the familiar apartment furnishings. She was in a trance as if she had gone back in time 20 years ago. He was also a young man and he was smiling at her. Her heart ached slightly. When she looked again, that high-spirited smile had already been replaced by her nephew's stiff and dull face. Silence and oppression accumulated in the doorway. Luonan thought that his reason had failed, but his face went slightly cold. It was his aunt's palm. She lightly patted him. "Then go tidy up a bit. The handsome boy of the Luo family can't be looked down upon." Chapter 60. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Xuanhuan provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luonan raised his head in astonishment and met his aunt's eyes. This strong woman, who was a department head in a multinational company, was frowning. "Don't tell me you want to wear your school uniform to the gathering?" No, I'm going to wash my face." How could Luonan not know that he had passed the test? He ran into the house in a hurry. During this time he took the time to glance at the study. The large black leather box on the desk was very eye-catching, but there were no signs of it being moved, which made him heave a sigh of relief. Luo Nan quickly changed into casual clothes and came out. Luo Shuqing was actually a little dissatisfied with his appearance. He was clearly going to attend a gathering, but he still brought an old-fashioned notebook as if he was going to take notes of a meeting. What was going on? In the end, she didn't point it out. She just said, "Let's go." Then she left first. Clearly, she was going to send Luo Nan to the gathering location. Luo Nan was already used to his aunt's forceful style. He was a well-behaved and obedient child. The 20-minute drive to the gathering place was destined to be full of struggles. Luo Nan's lackluster high school life had lasted less than a month. He had practically been asked about everything. The emphasis was placed on his relationships with his classmates. This caused Luo Nan, whose domain was practically blank, to be in quite a sorry state. They made it to the Limestone Water Village pub with great difficulty. Luo Shuqing was like the most dutiful of chauffeurs. She directly drove the flying car to the lobby and indicated that Luo Nan could get off. At the same time, her sharp eyes swept the lobby of the hotel. Luo Nan knew what his aunt was thinking, but he didn't have a single method to deal with it. He could only pray a few times in his heart, open the door, get off the car, and enter the lobby. Perhaps his luck had taken a turn for the better, but Luo Nan really did discover the sign-in area of the interactive meeting in a corner of the hall according to the hint of the invitation email. Even though there was no one on duty there, the electronic sign-in screen was still there. Luo Nan was able to find his name without a hitch. When he finished signing, his aunt's call came. "Don't stay out too late. Call me when the party is over." Luo Nan let out a sigh of relief when Luo Shuqing's flying car drove away outside the hotel. He glanced at the number of people who had signed in. There were actually more than 1,000 people. In Acumen College, due to the existence of the upper limit of society members, no society would have this kind of scale. Only an inter-society sorority could pull out such a grand display. Since there were so many people, one more or one less wouldn't make a difference. He didn't have to run over halfway and attract unwanted attention. However, Zhang Yingying was really unreliable. From the tone of the phone, it sounded like she had been waiting in the hotel for a long time. But where was she now? Luo Nan was about to contact her again, but before he could even dial out the number, he heard laughter coming from behind him. "Nanster, I thought you weren't coming." As he spoke, the sturdy Shui Lei strode over. Beside him was his girlfriend, Qin Xiaolin. Both of them were tall and had long legs. In just a few steps they had already reached the front. Luo Nan hastily ended the call. He felt awkward and baffled. Weren't these two people too well informed? He had only signed his name. If it was only Shui Lei, it would be easy to handle. But facing Qin Xiaolin, Luo Nan still needed to be courteous. "Apologies, senior sister Qin. I was busy so I came late." Qin Xiaolin pursed her lips into a smile. "Leicester and I didn't think you would come. I was shocked to see the message on the sign-in screen." This. Luo Nan didn't know how to respond for a time. Qin Xiaolin seemed to have drunk a bit of alcohol. Her cheeks were slightly red and she spoke quite straightforwardly, "But it's good that Junior could come. You're giving me face. After all, your sign-in counts as my performance." Having spoken to this point, Luo Nan naturally couldn't say that he didn't want to come. He actually wanted to leave. He could only follow the two of them to the banquet hall. It was just as Qin Xiaolin said. The cold dinner this time was very formal. There was a big shot from the student council who pulled in sponsors. They reserved the number 1 banquet hall of the hotel. The scene was extremely grand. Number 1 banquet hall was on the 27th floor. There were no unused elevators in the hall, so the three of them chatted as they waited. Qin Xiaolin talked about the matter of the society in a few words. This was also the reason why she invited Luo Nan to participate in the banquet. "I've already found people related to the matter of the society. I'll bring you and Leicester to meet them later. Do your best to pick one that is more to your liking. Leicester, don't say that the society is boring. There are no credits." Luo Nan had no choice but to open his mouth. "Senior sister, the matter regarding the society actually," Qin Xiaolin frowned. "You did it ahead of time?" Luo Nan nodded in agreement. "Li Mingda did it?" Qin Xiaolin's face flushed red again. This time it wasn't just because she was drunk, but because she was angry. "Junior, I've already mentioned it to you. The matter of the society is too complicated. It's not what you think it is. Do you know where Li Mingda is right now? He's in this hotel. He's being entertained in a private room. Even if you have to go through him, do you think it's more effective in his office or here?" "She's drunk," Shui Lei first reminded Luo Nan in a low voice. Then he turned to face Qin Xiaolin and guaranteed, "Nanster definitely didn't go through the procedures with elder illustrious virtue. I can testify to this." Elder illustrious virtue was quite angry at the time. Luonan could see Xianxialan's state. He wasn't angry, but he found it strange that Shuelei didn't explain the matter clearly to Xianxialan. I asked Shuelei in a whisper and he shrugged. Isn't there that senior Xia? He has a lot of connections there and I'm not good with words. Luonan immediately understood that this sturdy young man of the same age with rough lines actually had quite a plan in mind. He was absolutely not a boorish fellow who couldn't even keep his mouth shut. What are you guys talking about? Xiaolan frowned and stared at them. At this time she was tipsy and looked charmingly naive. Luonan and Shuelei raised their heads together. They were just about to explain when the elevator door opened and a dozen or so people walked out. It looked like the atmosphere was pretty good. Their laughter was loud and clear. Shuelei wasn't interested in these things. He blocked the elevator door and let Xiaolan and Luonan get in. Unexpectedly, Xiaolan pulled him back. Wait. Ha! You see that person? He just came out of the elevator. The youngest one. I just told you about him. He's the vice president of the student council, Chen Weikan. He's the president of the Mutual Assistance Society. He's my immediate superior. Luonan and Shuelei both looked over. The group of people had already walked out of the hall and were chatting outside. They couldn't see too clearly due to the contrast in the lighting. But from what they remembered, there weren't many young people inside. Xiaolan took a few deep breaths in an attempt to lower her tipsy state a bit. Then she reminded them, Senior Qin is an authoritative figure in the student council. His family seems to have military connections. He's quite a nice person normally because we're from the same family. Our relationship is quite good. I didn't ask him for help with this matter, but he mentioned it. It will certainly be a lot easier to handle. She was going to strike up a conversation. Shuelei and Luonan's gazes locked. They could both see the lack of interest in each other. However, Shuelei soon grinned and was secretly kicked by Xiaolan's pointed high heel. Chapter 61. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Xuanhuan provides you with wonderful novels to read. Look at the people that he went out with. Just the ones that I know include the heads of the parent-teacher conference, the board of directors and the society office. These are all people that he invited to raise the standards of the cold dinner party. Even Mingda Lao Xian is not qualified to be among them. Love Gong Smalt say Neku if you talk to him just a few words will save you a lot of trouble. Xiaolan was exasperated that Shuelei didn't live up to her expectations. Shuelei also frowned. He really couldn't do such a thing. Without waiting for a winner to be decided between the two, Chen Weikan and the others returned to the hall after sending off the guests who raised the standards. Seeing that they were approaching, Xiaolan secretly pushed Shuelei, reminding him to open the elevator door. Then she walked up to them and smiled sweetly. President Qin. On the other side, Xiaolan greeted the higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Association one by one. Shuelei hesitated for a moment, but his feet didn't move. This caused him to fall behind a beat. In front of him, Xiaolan turned around and her face stiffened. Luonan saw that the situation was far from good, so he gave Shuelei a push. He himself stood at the entrance of the elevator, setting up a temporary waiting mode. By the time he raised his head, Shuelei had finally greeted the other side, but there was no more. It was mainly Xiaolan who was holding the fort. The group moved towards the elevator. Chen Weikan, who was in the lead, looked really outstanding. He was tall and not particularly handsome, but his smile was gentle and a little distant. He also greeted Xiaolan and Shuelei without lacking in etiquette, but his footsteps did not stop as he headed straight for the elevator. Clearly he was the kind of person who would make others match his pace. He was a rather domineering character. In comparison, Luonan felt that he, who was standing at the entrance of the elevator, was quite like a doorman. Just as they reached the middle of the lobby, another group of people entered the hotel. The one in the lead was a woman in professional attire. She was carrying a rather retro folder and walking in a hurry. At first glance, she looked like a white-collar worker. Behind her were 4 rather capable and strong men, who were also in a hurry. This group of people was much faster than Chen Weisan's group. Especially the white-collared woman in front of him. Her figure was definitely more than 1.7 meters, and she wore a pair of high-heeled shoes that were more than 5 centimeters high. Although there was nothing special about her traditional suit and trousers, it matched her tall and slender figure. Especially her long legs under the slim trousers, the lines were beautiful, it was simply soul-stirring. Xiaolan was already a tall and thin beauty, but she was still half a head shorter than the white-collared woman. This was most obvious when the two of them passed each other. Although the white-collared woman had an amazing model body, her steps were not cat-like. The distance between her steps was large and she moved forward in a straight line. Even the 4 strong men behind her had a hard time following. When he got closer, he could see that the appearance of this white-collared lady matched her figure perfectly. Her silhouette was clear and solid like a sculpture, but there was a coldness that kept people away. In comparison, beauty was secondary. At this moment, she was frowning as if she was thinking about something. She walked into the elevator and ignored everyone else. A few strong men followed behind him, and in the blink of an eye, they filled up half of the elevator. Well, Luonan had really become a doorman now. Xuanhuan was a bit stupefied when the white-collared woman walked by like the wind. Only when he saw the face of the white-collared woman through the lights of the elevator did he wake up from a dream. He called out in a probing manner, Sister Fong?" The white-collared woman slightly raised her head. Her gaze swept over Xuanhuan's face and her frown deepened. Clearly she did not recognize who he was. Xuanhuan was certain of his own guess. He hurried 2 steps forward and laughed, "Hello, Sister Fong. I'm Xuanhuan. My father is the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Xia City Closed Defense Army, Xuanhuan." He strode into the elevator and his subordinates behind him, Xianxialan, Shuelei, and the others naturally followed him in. It was a grandiose and imposing scene. The white-collared woman's gaze swept across everyone's faces at this time. It was impossible to tell whether she was happy or angry, but Xuanhuan thought of a certain rumor. His heart suddenly jumped, and he turned his hand to block the elevator door, blocking everyone behind him. His forearm touched something at this time, but he was disinclined to pay attention to it. He turned his body to the side and didn't explain. He just said in a low voice, "You guys go next." He pressed the button to close the elevator door as he spoke, blocking the others outside. F***ck me? Luonan could clearly hear Shuelei's cursing. Then he saw Shuelei come over with a dark expression. He wanted to press the elevator button, but there were 2 people in between. It took a bit of time, and by the time he arrived the elevator had already gone up. He was a step too late no matter what. He looked at Xianxialan again and she was covering her chest with her hand. Xuanhuan had just extended his hand to block people, but he had bumped into her chest. This was a very disrespectful behavior. Of course the elevator clearly could fit, but it was forcefully cut in 2. This kind of behavior was even more arrogant. Shuelei was a simple and honest person, but this didn't mean that he didn't have a temper. He didn't grab Xuanhuan, and his eyes glared at the higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Society. His expression was quite unfriendly. If his tongue was handy he would have started cursing right now. Those who were able to mix their way to the higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Society, this sort of cross-society friendship society, were all shrewd people. They had a deeper understanding of Xuanhuan. Even though they felt uncomfortable in their hearts, they still had to protect the president's face and at the same time their own face. Someone immediately laughed, "Maybe it's some big sponsor. Speaking of which, President Qin is really working hard. Is he going to use a pretty boy trick?" Xianxialan came back to her senses from the side. She pulled Shuelei and whispered, "He didn't do it on purpose. Just look at that woman. You can tell that she's not easy to mess with." Perhaps these words were all reasons, but from Shuelei's perspective, they were too fucking roundabout. There wasn't a bit of sincerity in the roundabout. They were all bullshit. He looked around at the group of people at the elevator entrance, including Xianxialan. His breathing grew heavier, and it was clear that the rage in his heart was rising. Luonan was just about to step forward when he saw the situation, but then he felt his arms sink. Then a laughing voice entered his ear, "What a rude fellow. You actually didn't wait at the door. Luckily my eyes are sharp. I nearly missed you." Zhang Yingying had arrived. Luonan turned his head and saw that this young female lawyer had already changed into a completely different attire than when she was on the warship. A denim jacket paired with a short skirt revealed her snow-white long legs. She wore leggings and open-toed Roman shoes. It was almost summer attire, and she radiated with vitality. Zhang Yingying's sudden insertion actually eased the tense atmosphere a bit. Xianxialan could feel her boyfriend's rage as well as his clearly damaged self-esteem. But she didn't know how to console him for a time. She could dispel Shuelei's rage without provoking the group of people in the Mutual Assistance Society. She could only try to divert his attention. She first pulled on Shuelei's stiff arm. Her posture was exactly the same as Luonan and Zhang Yingying's. She forced a smile and greeted him, "Nanster, is this your girlfriend?" Luonan was just about to shake his head when Zhang Yingying giggled to the side as she responded, "Hello everyone. I'm one of Luo Nan's pursuers. Just call me Ying Ying. Chapter 62. Genius in 1 second. Remember Love Go? Speak, net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Qin Xiaolin was confused by Zhang Yingying's completely unconventional words. Her current state of being laden with worries really wasn't suitable to deal with Zhang Yingying, who was quick-witted and ever-changing. Fortunately, the elevator on the other side arrived at this time. The higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Association went over first. Qin Xiaolin tugged at Shui Lei, but she couldn't move him at all. The two were a bit stupefied. Luo Nan held Zhang Yingying's hand and lightly bumped into Shui Lei when they passed each other. Only then did the stiff atmosphere break. The group of people entered the elevator, but the atmosphere inside the elevator could be imagined. The only one who wasn't affected was Zhang Yingying. She pulled Luo Nan to the innermost part of the spacious elevator and intimately leaned against him. Her tall stature blocked everyone's line of sight. Come. Lower your head. How could Luo Nan allow himself to be pinched by her? Zhang Yingying's hand moved quickly right when he was frowning. She reached out and pinched his earlobe, stuffing something into his ear. Soon fine noises rang out. What's this? A built-in earphone? Examiner. The exam question. Okay. Actually, this toy is called the xianxia. The name isn't important, and the function isn't important. The important thing is that it's your entrance exam question. It can be very easy or it can be very difficult. Zhang Yingying lowered her hand and raised it again. This made Luo Nan understand that the answer to this question would determine his position in the professional society. Oh, you guys are going to the 27th floor? There's a gathering? You're not paying attention, kid. Then the exam will end at the moment we arrive at the station. Do your best. What the hell are you doing for no reason? Luo Nan found it hard to remain calm. He looked at the floor display and saw that they had already reached the 15th floor. Moreover, it was freaking smooth. They didn't stop at all midway. They would arrive at the station in at most 10 seconds. How could Luo Nan have the time to think deeply? A trembling sound rang out on the mental plane. The heavily chained crow that was most worthy of his trust passed through his skull and swept past the foreign object in his ear. Without a doubt, the heavily chained crow was Luo Nan's highest achievement in his format. It was also the embodiment of his ultimate strength. As for the wraith sign that was transformed from a dark side of life form like the burning wraith, ability users should be more sensitive to it. Luo Nan instinctively avoided contact between the two. He didn't use the foremost position of the chain. At the same time, the external neuron maintained a state of readiness, ready to be connected at any time. After all, the first impression that this xianxia gave him was that of a built-in earphone, like a special electronic product. If the results of the exam weren't ideal, he would have to take it even if he had to cheat. Luo Nan had to fight for his position in the professional society no matter what. This was because it represented his future. The flowing thoughts and judgments actually only took an instant. The heavily chained crow cut through the xianxia and used its resolution-limited senses to roughly analyze the internal structure of this little thing. Sure enough, this was a precision electronic product. The highly integrated components made Luo Nan, this electronic noob, completely stupefied. However, there was a strange reaction that came back the moment the chain cut through. Luo Nan's mind naturally concentrated over. The fine noises by his ears were all blocked out. Only the reaction formed a series of electrical signals that stimulated the relevant regions of the nervous system. It transmitted a set of effective information in a form that could be understood by people. Oh, this form is quite familiar? Before Luo Nan could react, a gentle artificial voice rang by his ear, number 5357. Welcome to the Xia City Wilderness Explorers branch. At the same time, a translucent area opened up on Luo Nan's retina. A concise visual interface appeared. It was a traditional forum interface. It displayed that the registration had already been approved. He needed to fill in the relevant information. Luo Nan was no stranger to this sort of virtual interface. Many companies' light film products all had this sort of function. 2 hours ago, he had used the external neuron to have a similar experience. This was also done through telepathy. There was an instant when Luo Nan nearly believed that the external neuron was disobedient again. But soon he confirmed that the external neuron still maintained its original state. The xianxia was just using an extremely similar method to convert the electrical signals into the brain. Yes, it was extremely similar. Luo Nan reached out his hand to press against the icy cold metal wall. The rate of his heartbeat rapidly increased. This was without a doubt a brand new clue. A clue related to the external neuron. A clue related to that coward. He should have thought of this earlier. With his grandfather's research on the coward, he should have intersected with ability users to a certain extent. Oh my god. His decision to join the professional society was correct. Ding. An electronic notification sound rang out. The elevator had reached the 27th floor. Everyone else walked out, but Zhang Yingying stared at him with a face full of suspicion. Don't tell me you don't feel anything at all. If you're this disappointing, I'll just kick you down the stairs. Luonan was unwilling to let Zhang Yingying see his chaotic mood. He concealed it by lowering his head and walked straight out. Zhang Yingying followed him out of the elevator and said in shock, "It can't be. This doesn't make sense. My judgment shouldn't be wrong." This woman's buzzing was annoying. Luonan's already fuzzy train of thought was completely messed up. There were already welcome to the society, and so on. Of course he wouldn't believe that he had failed the evaluation. He gave a cursory glance at the information-filling interface. The vast majority of the fields had drop-down options, probably to take into consideration the fuzzy nature of telepathy input. All he had to do was choose from among them. But aside from the basic age and gender, he had never seen most of the other fields. For example, the ability source flow column. There were two drop-down options. One was the talent flow, and the other was the system flow. What the hell? Luonan spoke in a bad mood. Am I the talent flow or the system flow? Of course it's the talent flow. Luonan's mind stirred and he confirmed the options. But he still felt that he didn't understand. What's the difference between the talent flow and the system flow? The talent flow is when one is born with a certain special ability. The system flow is when one relies on an existing cultivation system to undergo arduous tempering. Zhang Yingying's voice was a bit floaty, but Luonan had already decisively overturned her judgment before she could finish speaking. I'm the system flow. What a joke. If he chose the talent flow, then wouldn't his grandfather's decades of research and his 5 years of hard work be completely negated? His mind stirred again and he had already changed the options on the data. But before he could ask his next question, his neck suddenly tightened. Zhang Yingying had actually tightly strangled him from behind. At the same time, the young woman's energetic body pressed tightly against him, causing him to sway violently. You saw the interface right? You're filling out the form right? You still haven't awakened right? A precision-oriented mental strengthening. This is going to defy the natural order. Luonan nearly fainted from Zhang Yingying's stranglehold. His brain was already a mush. Chapter 63. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Speak, net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yingying disregarded the situation and caused a ruckus. Of course it was very eye-catching. Shui Lei and the others, who were about to enter the banquet venue, turned their heads one after another. They couldn't hear what Zhang Yingying was saying, but they were all dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Luonan was strangled by Zhang Yingying, unable to make any movements. Zhang Yingying smiled and waved her hand to the front, strangling Luonan to a corner. Shui Lei and the others could only assume that the young couple had some private things to say. They glanced at each other, shook their heads and entered the venue. After this interruption, the stiff atmosphere between Qin Xiaolin and Shui Lei continued to ease. The two found an opening and went to the other side to talk. Let go. Luonan was strangled by the neck and forcibly kidnapped by a woman, and he didn't even have the strength to fight back. Luonan's self-esteem suffered a serious injury. He was truly a bit annoyed. It was true that Zhang Yingying was a familiar person, but from his perspective he and Zhang Yingying clearly weren't that familiar. Perhaps it was because she felt his mood, or perhaps it was because her own excitement had passed, but Zhang Yingying took the initiative to loosen her arm. She recovered her cheerful appearance and pressed down on Luonan's chest before he flipped out. I'm worried that you haven't figured out the situation yet. Are you sure you came to participate in this cold dinner party? Luonan was speechless for a time, but the anger in his heart only increased. He took a deep breath. Then why did you follow me to the 27th floor? Because I had to make a choice. Zhang Yingying had a self-confident appearance. If you had no reaction at all to the xianxia, then I would have kicked you down the stairs to avoid losing face. Luonan sneered. Now that I have a reaction, you're going to strangle me? Hee, it was just an accident caused by a moment of excitement. Men can't be small, that? I'm happy for you. After all, it's really rare for an ability user candidate like you who hasn't awakened yet, to be able to enter the psychic wave network the moment you touch the xianxia. Psychic wave network? It was unavoidable for Luo Nan's attention to be diverted. Frankly speaking, Zhang Yingying's previous appearance of shouting and wrangling gave him a bit of an idea. Zhang Yingying asked him back, "What do you think the hexaear is?" "A special electronic device." Bingo! Hexaear is a psychic tool made by President Ouyang of the branch. Don't complain, Mr. President has always been weak at naming things. Zhang Yingying giggled as she sold out another person. "I won't explain the concept to you. I'll let the president talk to you personally later. You only need to understand that the hexaear is a special communication tool. It has a total of 6 communication levels. The simplest one is the radio, which is a one-way transmission of psychic waves. As long as you are an ability user or have the talent of an ability user and can receive this special psychic wave, you will be considered qualified." Luo Nan thought of that gentle artificial voice, the one that says "Welcome to the club?" Oh, by the way, you should have a serial number, right? What is it again? 5357. Okay, wait for me to add you as a friend. Zhang Yingying suddenly paused. She blinked and changed her mind. "Why don't you add me to familiarize yourself with the operation? My number is 6166. Let me tell you by the way. The next 2 communication levels are the television and the computer. The television is a one-way transmission of signals. It tests the ability user's mental senses and materialization abilities. We call it synesthesia. You are a precision type of mental enhancement. You have an advantage in this aspect. And when you reach the computer level, you can realize human-computer interaction. Then you can use the special frequency set up by the society to achieve mutual communication between network users. In order to reach this level, you need to have a bit of mental interference with reality. This is normally the privilege of the awakened. But since you are a psychic, perhaps you have a talent bonus." "I'm not a talent type," Luo Nan emphasized once more. He cared a great deal about this. He was certain that if he didn't have a breakthrough in the format and didn't form the heavily chained crow, then he absolutely wouldn't be a psychic. Perhaps he wasn't a psychic at all. Zhang Yingying spread her hands. "Okay, up to you. But if you don't add me as a friend, then I'm going to doubt whether or not you really have the ability." Luo Nan's face was cold as he tried to add her as a friend according to Zhang Yingying's words. But there was still a problem before his eyes. Information. Who's going to fill out stuff like information? What if some guy who doesn't like you sees it? Wouldn't that be sending your neck to the blade of someone else? Zhang Yingying's face was full of disdain as she encouraged Luo Nan. "Just skip it. Come, use telepathy to control it. Try adding me as a friend? Relax, the hexaear's fuzzy calculation ability is quite strong. As long as you have the ability, just think about it." Wow. Luo Nan saw the translucent interface before his eyes change amidst Zhang Yingying's gasp of surprise. It displayed, "You have already become a friend with 6166. Then a furry squirrel jumped out and bowed towards him. On the other side, Zhang Yingying burst into laughter. "Oh my god. You're using your school photo. So stupid." Even if you use a squirrel to act cute, there's still the word stupid in front of it. Luo Nan retorted sarcastically. But he also discovered that this was no different from the communication software on the market. He experimentally changed the effect of his display and soon a relevant modification interface popped up. Luo Nan thought for a bit and sent his visualization diagram up. The tetrahedron and its inscribed sphere spun in the dark void. It gave off a rather mysterious and serene feeling. Luo Nan had never considered this diagram to be some sort of secret that couldn't be announced. On the contrary, he wanted to publicize this diagram to as many people as possible, as well as the various theories related to it belonging to his grandfather. It was just that Luo Nan's understanding of the marvels within was far too lacking. He simply didn't have the qualifications to preach it. But as long as he had the chance, he would be happy to let more people have a deeper understanding of the diagram. As Luo Nan's good friend, Zhang Yingying naturally saw this change in the first instance. She mumbled "old pedant," but didn't say anything. Luo Nan was still pondering over the deeper usage of the hexaear. After all, Zhang Yingying had said that it had a total of 6 application levels. She had only talked about 3 before. What were the last 3? But a notification sound rang out before he could ask in detail. A friend request popped up on his retina interface. He had just entered the network. Where did this friend request come from? He swept a glance at the number and saw that it was displayed as 5156. Of course he couldn't see anything from this. He could only ask Zhang Yingying, "Who's 5156? 5156. Zhang Yingying blinked her eyes. It seemed that she confirmed it with her own hexayear. Finally, she made an expression of sudden realization. It's the secretary assigned to you. The society has always treated its members very well. It would be strange if I believed you. Luonan cast a glance at Zhang Yingying. In the end, he still added 5156 as a friend. Soon, a new request was sent over, but it was the wartime encrypted communication that made him speechless. He couldn't help but glance at Zhang Yingying. He suspected that this woman was setting up an ambush, but in the end, he still accepted the call. He had just accepted the request when a cold and clear female voice entered his ear. It was not the slightest bit sloppy. Mr. Luo, I'm the temporary secretary arranged by the society Fang Yuan. Which floor are you on? I'll come pick you up. You. Luo Nan hadn't come back to his senses yet when this secretary Fang spoke. Please share your geographical location at the same time. This will facilitate wartime communications. Over. Had he returned to the era of the Third World War? Chapter 64. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Speak. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Anil. Apologies to all the readers at the beginning of the month. I just discovered that the two characters, Fang Yuan and He Wei, had a conflict with the settings of the versions. I didn't check them out when I posted the drafts. When I wrote later, I followed the impression of a certain version, resulting in many mistakes. I've already revised the contents of Chapter 19, Part 1, and the title and contents of Chapter 35. This character has been renamed to He Yuan. She is the Captain He who appeared in the first volume. Please forgive me, readers. Readers who use the Crosscut app, if you wish to obtain a better reading experience, please erase all data from the app and download again. Lose weight and Kauda. No, this atmosphere isn't right. Luonan always had a clear understanding of his own position. Even if he jumped out of the circle of normal society and entered the special domain of the Wilderness Explorers Society, he was still a hard-working employee. He still hadn't familiarized himself with the working environment up until now. Naturally, he hadn't found a suitable position. But now you're telling me that he even has a secretary? Luonan stared at Zhang Yingying. Without a doubt, this innocent-looking woman certainly knew the cause and effect. Zhang Yingying's face was as white as a lotus flower. Did your secretary say how to arrange things? Luonan curled his lips. How did you guys arrange things before? You just invited me to walk in the elevator? Now that the evaluation is over, can I go home? Don't. The entrance evaluation is over, but there are other advanced evaluations. The society has already booked a room on the 81st floor. He will entertain you well. You just need to bury your head in there and draw. Draw? Luonan's train of thought gradually straightened out. He stared coldly at her. You guys want to evaluate my psychic abilities? This is different from what you said. Zhang Yingying had an innocent expression. Yeah, I told you before. It's best not to expose the fact that you have psychic abilities. You should first familiarize yourself with the situation in the society. It won't be too late to take it out when your abilities truly awaken. Otherwise, many people will come to bother you. You won't be able to refuse them and you might offend someone. Word for word, right? Luonan continued to stare at her. Zhang Yingying spread her hands. The problem is that my words aren't worth a fart. Now that the boss had spoken, the situation had changed. What else could I do? I was going to explain it to you when we get there, but since you can already see the interface and control it with your mind, please switch to the homepage announcement area. The translucent interface on Luonan's retina underwent a change following Zhang Yingying's guidance. As far as the eye could see, the rust-colored soil and the wave-like cracks continued to extend endlessly into the depths. You should have already seen the main interface. It's the wilderness, right? There's a notice board by the side of the road. Is there? What kind of third-rate game interface is this? Luonan cursed silently as he read the information. In less than half a second, words like darksider species, human-faced arachnid, virus, and so on swarmed in. They interweaved to form a blurry and gloomy screen of darkness before his eyes. Fine cold sweat seeped out from Luonan's spine with a whoosh. See, do I still need to say more? Right now, it was a war against the darksider race and its infected. The government, the military, the society, and Quantum Corporation are sparing no expense to launch a search and annihilation operation in the entire city. This epidemic must be completely contained before it spreads on a large scale. Zhang Yingying's finger tapped on Luonan's chest, one tap after another. Her face was devoid of a rare smile. My attitude is very serious. The society's attitude is also very serious. Every ability user, no matter if they're veterans or rookies, must contribute their strength when it comes to matters related to our safety. Moreover, Mr. Luo, who has just joined the society, you are a psychic. For the current society, you are what we need the most precious resource. Luo Nan muttered, the most precious resource? Of course. Do you know how many psychics the society has right now? Even a branch like Xia City, which has over 1,000 people, only has 4. One of them is currently exploring the wilderness and won't be able to rush back in a short amount of time. As for the remaining 3, old Master Yu is nearly 100 years old. It would be inhumane to have him run around day and night. He can only sit in the central command. Then East City and West City are divided. Old Gao and Old Bai are working hard right now. And then you discovered a new coolie? Luo Nan sneered in order to conceal the nervousness in his heart. In a certain sense, he could be considered a virus-infected person. It was just that the Darksider seed that had invaded his body had been subdued by the dark chains formed by the format's power. But the problem was that this kind of subduing didn't eliminate the roots. The burning wraith had transformed into the wraith sign, but it still retained its instincts. It was still able to devour its own kind to strengthen itself. Only the heavens knew whether or not his current state could be considered an infected person in the eyes of a group of ability users. Whether or not he was still a target to be strangled. But Luo Nan also had a sort of indescribable excitement amidst his nervousness. The human-faced arachnid. This sort of peculiar existence expanded the depth and breadth of his understanding of the burning wraith in an instant. It allowed him to overlook the ins and outs of this matter from a higher level. It allowed him to overlook the cause and effect of this matter. Moreover, he had a completely new concept of what he could do in the future. This was a large net laid down by the human-faced arachnid. He was originally a node in this net, but now it had already mutated. From the society's judgment, any other node that carried out the net operation would probably restore the human-faced arachnid to its peak. The human-faced arachnid's treacherous and bewitching nature would be displayed to the fullest. But looking at how his format was suppressing the wraith sign, wouldn't he be able to completely grasp the terrifying power of the human-faced arachnid in the end if he were to start from this point? Wasn't this the extraordinary power he had always been pursuing? It was also a power grasped by the power of his format. Perhaps this was where the mysteries of his grandfather's research lay? Hey, what are you thinking about? You're not scared stupid, are you? Luo Nan came back to his senses in a daze. He didn't immediately respond. Zhang Yingying patted his shoulder. Don't be scared. It's normal to be scared. But it's already very gratifying that you didn't cry for your mother. Relax. We just want to borrow your marvelous draw ability. And we'll absolutely protect you. Look, you have me now. Then the society arranged a full-time secretary for you. It's Yuan, right? She's a monster who entered the society with a C+ score. A genius. Her true strength can only be higher and not lower. Luo Nan concealed a smile. Don't they say that only psychics are useful when facing the Darksider species? What are you thinking about? Any qualified awakened has a method to lock onto the Darksider species in a true battle. It's just that each method is different. Many people can even see it with their naked eyes. Zhang Yingying solemnly corrected Luo Nan's preposterous and laughable train of thought. The true problem is that when the Darksider species is in a hidden state, only psychics can discover the clues. The society is relying on your ability in this aspect. Who would send you to the front lines? Oh really? Luo Nan became even more nervous. It seemed that his situation was more similar to that of an awakened. It was also an intuition. At most, he could rely on the wraith sign to sense it at close range. As for psychics, when he fooled Zhang Yingying, all he did was draw what he saw. In addition, Li Xueqing had a bit of a psychic's intent. But the premise was that the burning wraith on Li Xueqing's body had already taken form. They could sense each other. This kind of situation was seriously different from the long-range senses of a psychic. What to do? Luo Nan wanted to pick up his notebook right now. He wanted to make some gestures to avoid making a fool of himself on stage. In fact, he really did take out his notebook. He opened the flexible e-ink screen and drawing software. Chapter 65. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Xuanhuan provides you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yingying burst out laughing when she saw this. Sharpening a spear at the last minute? Even if it's not fast, it's still good. Do you really think this is an exam? Luo Nan didn't even raise his head. Someone said that I'm a psychic, but I've never admitted it. Now that it seems like it's not bad, I'll draw a picture to get a feel for it. If it really is. You mentioned what if to me? Zhang Yingying saw that Luonan wasn't sharpening his spear at the last minute. Instead, he was running away at the last minute. Her almond eyes immediately widened and she grabbed him by the collar. You're able to draw my white rainbow and that bizarre prison building sketch. How could you not be a psychic? Sure, I'm a shaman. Luonan continued to place his gaze on the drawing software. He wanted to draw something, but his mind was in chaos. He had no idea what to draw at all. At this time, Zhang Yingying was still talking noisily in his ear, so he decided to just throw in the towel. You were the one who introduced the concept of shamans to me. I'll also take the association's offer. Anyways, in the end, it'll be you, Sister Yingying, paying the bill, right? Luonan had never used such an intimate form of address before. It made Zhang Yingying fall back in disgust. Kids with reverse psychology were not easy to deal with. Zhang Yingying's eyeballs swiveled. Her hand that was gripping Luonan's collar loosened a bit. It's just hiring a C++ secretary and bodyguard. I can afford it for one night at most. On the other hand, if you want to enjoy this kind of treatment for a long time, then you'll have to put in a bit of effort. Alright, you seem to have said that you needed inspiration or something. Do you want to find a bit of excitement? Acumen College's large living area has a very high level of service. In this mutually shameless competition, Luonan was defeated by Zhang Yingying's abundant experience in the end. He pursed his lips and said nothing. Distractedly, he drew meaningless lines on his graphic software. At the end of the day, he still cared a lot about the professional association's courtesy. This was a high starting point that he had never imagined before, and it was also a great opportunity that fell from the sky. He didn't want to let this opportunity slip through his fingers, so he had to do something. Luonan tried to recall this morning's practice that was most similar to a psychic's methods. But that dreamlike feeling was really too mysterious, and with his current restless state, it was really difficult for him to completely recreate it. Zhang Yingying tilted her head and looked at the messy lines on the flexible screen. The more she looked, the more suspicious she became. Hey, if you want to make fun of yourself, don't drag me into it. Luonan was disinclined to pay attention to her. Someone walked past them at this time and the person felt a bit familiar. Raising his head, he saw that it was Shuelei and Qin Xiaolin. Both of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Clearly, the previous conversation had not been resolved. The atmosphere between the two of them was extremely tense. At this time, they were walking in the direction of the elevator, not knowing what they were going to do. Under such circumstances, it was obviously not appropriate to greet them. Luonan could only pretend that he didn't see anything. He lowered his head and smeared 2 more times, but he inexplicably drew out the abstract lines of the wraith sign. Moreover, it was done in one go. It had never been so efficient before. Luonan only came back to his senses when the symbol took form. His heart palpitated slightly. He was worried that Zhang Yingying would see some clues, so he raised his head to glance at her. He saw that this woman had long since been dazzled by his chaotic lines. She was a bit foolish for once. You feel something? Luonan was just about to respond with a sentence when he suddenly went mute. Suddenly drawing the wraith sign had some ominous implications. In the next moment he completely followed his instincts and turned his head. Shuelei and Qin Xiaolin had already gotten into the elevator. The lights in the elevator shone down, but they were unable to illuminate the gloomy faces of the two. He felt that a dispute could erupt between the two at any time. And at this time, a bizarre thought flashed through Luonan's mind. It was the information he had just looked up this morning. It came from the Secret Star forums. It was a suspected mental illness, a human tragedy triggered. The wife killed the husband, and before this, the husband and wife experienced a nightmare at the same time. Alert! 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 The bold-faced words of the Secret Star forums appeared in his mind. Luonan closed his notebook with a bang. He turned around and headed toward the elevator, shouting loudly at the same time, Shuelei! This loud shout was absolutely impulsive. Even Luonan found it a bit hard to continue after the shout left his mouth. He didn't know how to explain himself. But right at this moment, a trembling sound rang out on the mental plane. The heavily chained crow hummed. And most importantly, the wraith sign at the very front of the chain lit up with a dark red glow. Luonan's mind throbbed, but what immediately floated up in his mind was that he didn't know what to do. This was because the wraith sign's senses clearly came from 2 completely opposite directions. One was directly in front, and the other was directly behind. Luonan could clearly see what was happening directly in front of him. Right when Shuelei was staring at him in a daze, a ghost-like burning wraith appeared. Half of the wraith's body had sunk into Shuelei's shoulder. It was unknown whether it was being pulled out or whether it was continuing to seep in. Reality and illusion interweaved. The strange scene of a human body and a wraith merging together made one's scalp go numb. And directly behind him, careful. Zhang Yingying's screech and the sharp whistling sound of tearing air rang out at the same time. The elevator door was already closing at this time. Luo Nan could clearly see a warped figure sticking to his body on the smooth metal door. The figure's shoulder exploded with blood. The blood sprayed out and landed on the side of Luo Nan's neck. And at the same time, Luo Nan's back violently shook. It was as if someone was pushing against him, causing him to fall forward. But the force was too great. In the end, Luo Nan's feet didn't touch the ground at all. He soared into the air and collided with the elevator door that had yet to close. The elevator door approached at high speed, and the gap between the doors slowly shrank. Luo Nan could roughly understand that he was probably being used as a tool to block the door. Then the elevator door opened to the two sides at this time. A figure staggered and fell to the side, smashing into a corner of the elevator. It was Qin Xiaolin. As for Shuelei, this big fellow who was being cut by half of the wraith was blocking the door. His simple and honest face even carried a bit of childishness. He was like an angry Vajra, and his thick palm chopped down at Luo Nan's face. Perhaps it was because of the haste, but Luo Nan didn't even have the time to stir up his negative emotions. Right now Luo Nan was actually quite calm. In the blink of an eye, Shuelei's palm cut past Luo Nan's ear. He grabbed Luo Nan's shoulder and pushed down lightly. Luo Nan instantly broke free from his suspended state. He involuntarily tumbled and fell into the corner of the elevator, in the same direction as Qin Xiaolin. Luo Nan's field of view spun as he tumbled, but the heavily chained crow drove the wraith sign. The entire surrounding environment of the elevator was mapped into his brain. At the same time, an angry roar rang out beside his ear. Shuelei had already collided with the shadow that had pounced into the elevator. It looked like Shuelei wanted to knock the person out of the elevator. But the opponent's momentum was far too strong. Shuelei's majestic body was actually completely unable to resist. His entire body fell backwards, smashing heavily into the back of the elevator. From Luo Nan's senses, it seemed as if the entire building was swaying. Chapter 66. Genius in 1 second. Remember love go away? Speak, net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The swing of the elevator was quite intense. Perhaps the violent vibrations had caused some kind of circuit failure, but the elevator doors didn't even close. The entire elevator suddenly sank down, sinking no less than half a floor. Zhang Yingying, who had rushed up from behind, was nearly crushed to death in the intertwining cracks of the elevator. Fortunately, she was able to make an emergency stop, narrowly avoiding disaster. But she looked at the sealed entrance and stamped her feet in anxiety. The elevator soon came to a stop. This sort of maglev elevator floated within the magnetic passageway. The moment the elevator's swing exceeded the safety line, it would automatically activate its mechanical lock and fix its position. This also meant that the elevator would become a sealed space for a short period of time. Luo Nan and Qin Xiaolin didn't have the ability to fight. Their fates would be decided by Shuelei and his enemy, who were currently entangled together. Shuelei's face flushed red. The man wearing a black suit in front of him was a size smaller than him, but the strength the man displayed was far above his own. Shuelei's internal organs felt as if they had been flipped upside down after receiving a frontal attack. Even breathing was difficult for a few seconds. What was even more bizarre was that the other party clearly had a serious wound on his shoulder that tore through his flesh and bone. His face didn't have any distinctive features, but it was so apathetic that it made one's heart go cold. His exertion of strength wasn't affected at all. Right now, the two's arms were pressed against each other and their legs were apart. Their entire bodies were entangled together. Shuelei was just about to use a wrestling method to seize back some of the initiative, but he saw his enemy open his mouth, revealing dense white teeth, and directly bite at Shuelei's throat. Shuelei grunted and relied on his height to smash down with his head. His forehead collided with the enemy's face, blocking this vicious beast-like bite. It was reasonable to say that Shuelei's choice was brave and correct. The position of his collision was also advantageous. But the other party was clearly bleeding from his nose and mouth, yet it was as if nothing had happened. Shuelei's head was dizzy, and in the end, it affected his body's exertion of strength. His feet floated slightly, and just as he was about to cry out in his heart, His whole body was lifted off the ground by the brute force of the other party. Then the world spun around him and he fell heavily on the metal floor with a hollow sound. This time he almost threw up his heart and lungs. However, years of arduous training came into play. The instant Shuelei lost his balance, he almost instinctively twisted his legs, and in the end he still managed to trip the enemy. Taking advantage of this gap, Shuelei's majestic body contracted at an unbelievable degree, and then bounced up again. Just as the enemy was about to pounce on him, Shuelei took advantage of the momentum to deliver another headbutt. This time it was from the bottom up, hitting the enemy's chest. After 2 consecutive tremors, Shuelei and the enemy were pushed back at the same time, hitting the metal inner wall behind them. What was worth rejoicing about was that Shuelei's grasp of direction was quite good. He pushed the enemies in the opposite direction from Luonan and Qinxiaolin. He leaned slightly to the side and was able to protect the 2 who had no combat strength. He should be able to take a breather now, right? Shuelei's chest heaved up and down violently. He didn't know why, but he was in a terrible state today. His stamina consumption was especially severe. The previous round of dangerous hand-to-hand combat had almost completely emptied his stamina. Was it because he was too nervous? Shuelei couldn't figure out his own situation, and the enemy in front of him didn't immediately make a move. Instead, he used a strange and unfocused gaze to look over here. He was simply like a mental patient. Are you guys crazy? Qinxiaolin, who was in the corner, was finally able to somewhat react after a series of unforeseen events. Everything that happened before her eyes had already completely exceeded the limits of her common sense. She knew that her boyfriend could fight very well, but she had never seen him fight to the death without saying a word. There was absolutely no reason at all. Luonan, whom she had just gotten to know today, had joined in as well. It looked like he was standing on their side. Or perhaps it was because of this fellow that the inexplicable murderer was drawn in. What she couldn't bear the most was the as-it-should-be expressions on their faces. What the hell was going on? Qinxiaolin struggled to stand up. She felt a sense of absurdity and dread that separated herself from the rational dimension. It made her instinctively want to flee this area, to flee from these people. But how could she do this in the completely sealed elevator? She could only shout at the top of her lungs, "Can't you guys stop and talk nicely? We're all trapped right now." "Shut up." Short shouts came from the mouths of 2 people at the same time. Shuelei and Luonan spoke in unison, shouting to stop Qinxiaolin's irrational actions of not understanding the situation at all. After shouting, Shuelei locked onto the enemy in front of him with full concentration. Luonan spoke a few more words. "Senior sister, please calm your emotions, okay?" As he spoke, he turned his face to face Qinxiaolin from all sides. Qinxiaolin was stupefied for a moment. She was locked in place by Luonan's mottled and strange gaze. It was as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out in an instant. She leaned against the corner of the elevator, her mind a field of blankness. Luonan used hypnosis to temporarily control Qinxiaolin. Then he raised his head to look at the upper part of the elevator. Shuelei's attention was on the formidable enemy before him, but Luonan's attention was on an even stranger level. The burning wraith that had struggled within Shuelei's body in the previous fight had already drilled out from Shuelei's body. It had seized a considerable amount of blood and energy. And at the same time, the burning wraith also leaped out from within the body of the fierce black-suited male. The 2 intertwined and fused together before Luonan could react, growing stronger in an instant. This sort of change really exceeded the scope of Luonan's reaction. Luonan also wanted to resolve this problem. The heavily chained crow had already been released and the wraith sign was glowing. But it didn't display the crushing superiority of the previous few times. It even displayed a bit of caution and conservatism. This was because the burning wraith that had just fused together in the elevator was the most powerful one Luonan had ever seen. Even the one Luonan had once controlled to turn the military transport ship upside down seemed to be somewhat inferior. The appearance of the burning wraith's body was even more similar to the appearance of the human-faced arachnid from the R&D district. Luonan saw the information from Quantum Corporation and confirmed a step further. The burning wraith's body was indeed like a hybrid between a human and a spider. To be more precise, it was a giant spider that was clinging onto the back of a human. Half of its body was fused into the human's body. The 2 shared the same head. It was ugly and demonic. The wraith floated in midair. Actually, it was still using a strange method to endlessly absorb the energy from Shuelei and the black-suited male. Shuelei's symptoms of being easily fatigued actually came from this. His opponent was actually more or less the same. Through the senses of the wraith sign, Luonan was able to estimate a few things on a deeper level. The current burning wraith had already devoured at least 10 or more of its own kind to display this sort of form. In other words, purely in terms of quantity, it was several times stronger than the wraith sign on Luonan's side. Luonan couldn't help but sigh at his own naivety as he thought about the hunting thoughts that had just existed. This was the rhythm of being devoured by the enemy. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.